I never knew that. Hey, today we're going to have an exciting talk with Sean about what he's doing in archery. I think we're going to have some really good stories. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury, and I'm going to be your host today on Archery Talk 101. And just remember, those of you that are watching this video, either in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, we're more than welcome to make comments. And if you're on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself, and go ahead and leave comments if you want to have any comments on the show, any questions. And we can also listen to it on Spotify and several other places that host podcasts, as well as I'm on Audible. Go out to audible.com and you can listen to the show there for free. You don't have to pay anything to listen to it. So let's on to the show here. We're going to be talking with Sean about some exciting stuff. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Hey, Roy. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, how about if you introduce yourself and tell our listeners and watchers something about yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Sean Royster. Um, I am on the Bowtech Pro staff, as well as I'm also the president for our local archery club, Yogi Bowman. I'm also on the board of directors for the NYFAB, which is a sister organization to the NFAA, which is centralized in New York. It's a New York organization which we organize a lot of NFAA shoots here in New York, such as state championships and some other tournaments that we do. So those are pretty much my three big things that I do.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah, right.
Get a hold of you. How would they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on my Facebook as Sean Royster. Instagram, same thing, Sean_Royster. Um, and then I also do have a YouTube channel, which is my name as well, Sean Royster, which I upload a lot of stuff, tournament wise and even at home tuning and repair wise on my equipment and stuff like that, just to try to educate or at least show people how I do things with my bows, getting them set up for, tournaments and whatever else.
Some good information, and I'll leave links in the description to those places so that makes it easier for you to find him and get some information, and we'll take a look at what's going on with your world and go from there. Uh, so you're into a lot of different things, So let's talk about Bowtech and what you're doing with Bowtech and how that's going and kind of the advantage of shooting the Bowtech bows and maybe some disadvantages or
Yeah, yeah, sure. Um, well, so Bowtech was one of the first bows I've ever picked up, coincidentally enough, and I just immediately fell in love with them. So I just kept shooting them. Every new bow I got happened to be one, and I just fell in love with the technology and how it shot and everything else. So I would just shoot them at tournaments. That's what I wanted to shoot. Didn't have a sponsorship or anything else like that. And did very and have done very well with those bows. Personally, I believe they're so easy to tune and to personalize to a person that you really can't go wrong with them. Anybody can really shoot them. Not that there's anything wrong with other bows, but it's a little frustrating when you get one and you want to tune your draw length and you have to buy whole new mods just to be able to change it or things like that. And with the Bowtech bows, you could change it to anything you want them to be. So little things like that I feel like really matter because I really play a lot with draw length and stuff like that because when a shop, gets you fitted for a bow, they'll get you in a ballpark of where you need to be. But when you're really trying to get like that perfect accuracy or that perfect fit, you need to play with it sometimes here and there to get it to be just perfect, where you're nice and tight, bone to bone contact, and all that. So you need to be able to have the adjustability on it. So that was the main reasons I really fell in love with the bows and stuck with it. And then down the road, a few years later, after competing, winning, um, a bunch of stuff, and then just moving on, I ended up getting in contact with our local rep, Caleb Mosier, who actually set me up with a sponsorship to be on the pro staff with Bowtech. So
That's pretty good. It's always nice when you shoot a bow you like, and then you can get on the pro staff afterwards, and
yeah.
kind of help because you're definitely a spokesman for Bowtech.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
all the bow companies make good bows.
They do.
They all make good bows.
They
It's just
all do.
which one fits you better. You pick up
Exactly.
the Bowtech and just fell in love with it, and that's what you shoot. And
Yep.
to work in, you've been shooting it for a while and you're familiar with it and you like it, and next thing you know, you're on the pro staff for Bowtech, and there's just so many of them. And I know you'd mentioned,
Yeah.
about, it's so adjustable. That's what's nice about it. But the
Right.
theory behind the non-adjustable ones is the cam is designed to be the perfect setup for that draw length.
Right.
And then, if you go your half-inch increment cams, and now if you want a quarter inch, now you gotta, some of them have an extra pin, or you're twisting the strings or twisting the cables to
Yep.
adjust it. And um, you know then if you need to go too far, you didn't order the right one. When I first started, I thought I was 32-inch draw length, because the
Right.
first compound bow, I went into the shop and I picked one up and I drew it back, and he says, "How's that feel?" It's like, okay. I didn't know I was drawing 32 inches. I'm
right.
clear back and arms stretched out. I didn't know.
Right.
Till probably 10, 15 years later in 95, I went down the club I was in. NFA come in and taught, 3-day school on how to
Okay.
shoot, the back tension and everything else. And so I go down
Hmm.
there, I got my bow 32-inch draw length. So they measure me. I says, I'm 29 and a half. So this is like on a Friday night. And the Saturday night, your bow had to be 29 and a half inches, so there's no reason to continue.
Right.
So I'm spending Saturday, trying to figure out how to get this down to 29 and a half inches. And
Right.
so I did, and I went through all the shooting, and then, they had an additional training you get to get certified as an NFA instructor, which I did.
Hmm.
Just at the basic level, but I've taught hundreds of people since then. And now I shoot 29. I've even
Oh
shot
yeah.
a little bit more. And that
Yep.
actually fits me pretty good at my length. And the nice thing about it is the way I do it is my arm isn't locked out. It's bent a little bit and my hand is
Yeah.
turned. And I'm off to the straight to the side. So when I shoot, my hand goes straight to the target. And
Exactly.
now I don't hit my big heavy coats.
Right.
I can wear a big heavy coat, don't need an arm guard on it, because I shortened it up that half inch, and I
Yeah.
still have good alignment between my elbow. I just showed a video in the podcast I did that come out, before this one. In the
Hmm.
group, they already have it. Not the group. I think it's the ninth when it comes out. So, but as in the video, I could see straight from the elbow through the hand, through the arrow to the tip. Now, fortunately, I was doing it in my basement, so you couldn't really get up high enough to see all that, but you could see the alignment. And,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that, the video I just did in the last podcast was all about how to take a video and what to look for,
Right.
because that's
Right.
the key, is figuring out what you can do to
It
fix,
is.
to be consistent. And there's a lot of tweaking, because this wasn't what my planning on talking about, but it kind of fit
No,
in
it's okay.
talking about. So um, there's so much that you can learn from watching a video, and
There is.
knowing what to do to fix it. Now that's a different story. That's
Right.
what it takes someone like you or myself that has some experience in setting these bows up, and
Yeah.
get with us. We'll be glad to help you out. Um,
Absolutely.
that's the thing we want to do. And just get that thing set up. I tell new archers, go to the archery store. If you're right or left eye dominant, whichever one, you want to make sure you know that before you start picking up bows. So you're going to pick up the bow, put it in your hand. You like it? Okay, consider it. Grab another one. You don't like it? Put it up. Don't
Right.
worry about price, as much. Make sure it's within your budget to start with.
Right.
And that's, Bowtech I know has, lots and lots of options for the new archer, this young archer,
Oh
want to
yeah.
grow with
Nice.
you, and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of options. When I
Right.
was first doing this, you had to get the bow because there's only so much range and draw length and draw weight.
Right.
you know,
Right. They,
so
yeah.
back when I had my store, the PSC Nova bow was, there's three different draw length and three different weights because
Right.
the younger one has the lighter weight and the lighter draw lengths, and then as you get bigger and bigger, then you can go in there and I forget which model it is now. It's been a while since I looked at, but
Yeah.
they have one to go from basically 24-inch draw length to 31-inch draw length, and
Yep.
so it'll grow with you, and good to get for kids,
It is. It's great.
because then as they grow and the draw length increases, the weight increases too. You can't have a 24-inch draw length and 70 pounds.
Right.
They just
Right.
don't go that way.
No.
So, generally as you grow and your arms get longer and, your poundage can go up, especially if you're shooting the whole line. So,
Right.
that's nice about some of the new bows where they have that adjustability in them.
It really is. And it saves, especially like parents with kids, of having to buy a new bow so soon. Instead, especially with how fast kids grow, they get to grow with the bow until they kind of grow out of it. I say, as in a sense of like out shooting the bow, where they really peaked in the performance they can get with that style of bow until moving up to like a higher quality target bow or something like that. But it's great for that, and especially from growing and learning. So
Yeah, and that's what you want to look at too is what's your skill level.
right.
Don't get a fast bow without having the skill because, you know, as the bows get faster, your form has to improve with it as well.
Absolutely, it
Because, I
does.
say the faster, the bigger, the bigger your mistake is, or it exaggerates your mistake more. So the faster the bow, the more it exaggerates your mistake. That's
Right.
where, like the previous podcasts, you need to video it.
Right. Right. Which, like me and a buddy of mine that I shoot with all the time, we constantly say to each other, it's nice to have someone to shoot with because they can watch you and look at your form. Same
Right.
thing, like videoing yourself. But there's even times where I'm shooting here, whether through paper or at a target, and I know I'm doing something wrong, but I can't see myself. So the
Right.
only way you can see yourself is by videoing yourself and really taking a look at your form from all different angles and really trying to diagnose what it is that you're doing wrong, or form issue or whatever it is. So I really agree that it is so important to be able to video yourself and watch what you're doing.
Yeah, and if you want a video from the front, make sure your camera's just on a tripod. Don't have anybody standing in front of you.
Yeah.
That's don't have a standing in front, videoing from the front because you don't want to be on that end of the arrow.
No.
Even a good shot, they still don't take the chance.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
put the camera on a tripod, record it. If you're by yourself, it's going to be on a tripod anyway, because always you're
Right.
not going to be able to record it. And just get it started and look at, you can record, with being on a podcast, with a tripod.
Right.
That's really, really good. So,
Yeah, it's really important.
so when you do look at setting up a bow, what are some of the things that you're looking at, with the shooter as well as the bow setup, and what's kind of your process when you go setting up a bow just for a new shooter?
For a new shooter. So I'll look at first of all, like their age, size, and all that stuff, and then how good of a shooter they are, what they're looking at getting into, if it's just for fun, if it's for hunting, or if they want to possibly go further with it and do tournaments. And then I'll always ask them, is this something you're going to hunt and do tournaments with, or or are you just looking just to hunt, or just looking for tournaments? Because that, I feel like, makes a big difference. For someone who's going to hunt with the same bow, then I would, push them more towards trying the bow hunter class to start out. If they're like, no, I really like target shooting, I just want to shoot indoors, just paper or 3D, then I would have them look at a target bow. Um, Not that you can't do both with one or the other, but you would really like something that's more set towards what you want to do with it. So I would look at that and then do the same thing. We would go to a local shop if they were interested and really wanted my feedback of, helping them out to find that bow that they want. Go to a shop and, like you said, have them shoot all of them. Like, obviously, like I said, I shoot for Bowtech. I love Bowtechs, but I'll never push someone to, like, you have to have it. I always want whatever they feel more comfortable with. If it happens to be a Bowtech, that's great. And I'll point out all the good qualities with it while we're doing that. But if they find something else that better fits them, that feels better, that they really fall in love with, then yeah, obviously that's the one you want to go with. Um, but that's really what I look at is try to just find that perfect fit for them with however they want to take archery, whatever they want to do with it, then we try to find something that fits them best for that. That way it works the best for them, and it gives out the best performance for the job they want it to do.
Yeah, I know I've been shooting PSE for 20 years. So, um,
Right.
and the same thing, it's like, okay, PSEs, they make great bows, but you know what? Sometimes that new archer comes in and Bowtech is the best one for them, or
Right.
Diamond or any of the other manufacturers out there.
Right.
Places I worked in sell Matthews because there's a Matthews dealer, so they didn't sell those. But
Hmm.
they don't really make beginner bows.
No, I mean, they have their mission line, um, but the the difference I've seen between their mission line and Bowtech's diamond line is that they don't have as much of the adjustability, like I said before, where they can grow with it. It almost like they'll grow out of it at a certain point to where they have to move on. With some of the
Right.
diamond bows, they could shoot it from a kid all the way to my age. It has that wide of an adjustability. Um, but yeah, so it always just depends on the shooter. That's what I
Right.
love about this sport. It's so individualistic of everything depends on that person. Everything's different for everybody that picks a bow up. Whether from size, weight, everything. It's one of the great things I love about it is that it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and depending on what you want to do with it too, that's the thing that you have to look at is, one of the first questions, I like to ask an archer that's coming in that is new. If they've been shooting for a while, that's a little different, you know, questions.
Right.
But somebody new looking to get into it, it's like, what do you want to do with it?
Exactly.
Y- You know, uh, do we need a recurve or a longbow or compound, or do we need to go to a
Right.
crossbow? They're all archery.
Oh yeah.
My
Absolutely.
definition of archery is a stick with a string flinging another stick.
Yeah.
Uh, You know, uh,
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, well, crossbows been around for thousands of years, and so is longbows and
Right.
recruits haven't been around quite as long. But the
Yeah.
sport of archery, they found evidence of 64,000 years ago that there was bow and arrows.
Yeah. Which
So it's
is
been
just
around for forever. So um, I don't know if they even find any humans much older than that. you know, but
yeah.
you
Seriously.
know, it's bits. They found evidence of it. In I forget which country it is now. I did a little history on it on I think on one of the podcasts and I talked about that. I did a bunch of research and found out where there was at. And it's long enough ago I forgot now.
Right.
I can always go back and find the podcast and go out there and let's do it again. But it's been around for a long time. And what do you want to do? Especially like
Yeah.
when the Hungry Games came out.
Right.
We had a lot of people come in, they wanted that recurve, like
Yeah.
a shot. And
Yeah.
you could tell that she was taught by Olympic archer. You could see
Yeah.
it in her form.
Right.
And she was taught very well how to shoot.
Oh
And
yeah.
you know, that inspired a lot of people coming into the archery stores, wanting to get their bow. And
Yeah.
a lot of them wanted the recurve, and others, when they looked at it, it's like they went to the compound. And
Right.
That's you want to look at it. And then I was asking, okay, what do you want to do with it? You want to just fling arrows in your backyard? I'm still going to teach you. Whenever I sold a bow, I give a shooting instruction with it because I wanted you to shoot the best you could.
Right,
Straight
exactly.
curve, longbow, or compound. Crossbows,
Yep.
there wasn't as much instruction other than keep your fingers below the rail because it will take
Yeah.
off if you get it above there. So
Oh
I said,
yeah.
put your finger above there, pull the trigger, you're going to lose whatever finger's above the rail because it will take them off. If it doesn't, it's going to hurt real, really bad.
Right.
But
Right.
now the new bows, you can't really get your fingers up there unless you're really trying because there's a
Yeah.
handle that keeps you way down below. If you move your hand up inside of there, they're designed, so that you have a place to put your hand that's going to
Right.
lead to not having your fingers up there. Um, you just got to realize that, all these bows have an inherent danger in them.
Oh yeah.
They're, they are a weapon. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Now, how many get hurt with it? Yeah, smacking arms because your drawing's
Right.
too long, or,
Right.
or you're really forcing your shooting form is really, really bad. But generally, if you hit your arm, the form's too long.
Yeah.
Recurve had a tendency to do that because just they're not offset as much, and if you grab it like you do a bat, you're going to hit that arm.
Right.
And the forms that I teach are real closed forms, so you're straight to that target, straight off to the side. But if
Yeah.
your grip is wrong, you will be smacking your arm
Oh, absolutely.
because it puts it in the way. But if you do
Yeah.
the grip I teach, you don't need an open stance where you're turning open. Now I know a lot they'll teach, like Nebraska Game and Parks, they teach an open stance because if you're gripping it wrong, at least you don't smack your arms.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the advantage of an open stance is you're not going to hit your arm. You do a
Right.
close stance like I teach, you got to have a little bend in that arm. You got to have the right grip.
Right.
So it's all different. Just different people is different way to do them. And I teach everybody the same way. The first lesson,
Mm-hmm.
start modifying it to fit them.
Right.
And many years of teaching archery and many years of teaching martial arts, you have the same technique that you teach, and you teach the exact same technique, and one person picks it up, the next one cannot do it.
Yeah.
You
Oh yeah.
modify the technique slightly, and then you can do it.
Right.
I had one guy I was helping with, and his left hand is holding the bow with. He had a problem with his wrist. He couldn't let that wrist drop down and push with, the straight through the arm because it just
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't go there. So we had to do a little bit of tweaking to get that grip so that he could be consistent. And
Right.
we had one 45-minute lesson, and he went from probably about 4 or 5 inch group to 3 hours touching in about a week later. So, you
Right.
can work with people and figure out what their problem is and go with it. And that's kind of the fun part.
It is. It
You know,
really is.
when you get an archer that it's like all of a sudden it clicks. And,
Oh, I love seeing it.
well, and then the ones that I really enjoy is the ones where I had one time the husband come in, wanted a bow, and the wife was there, and I said, "You want to shoot one?" She said, "Nah." So you just shoot, take one shot. Okay. First arrow shot. Ooh, can I shoot again? One
Yep.
arrow, and it's like, oh, I have another archer to sell a bow to, and two
Yeah,
shots shoots,
exactly.
and going on and on and on, and
Yeah.
that's the fun part is when you somebody that all of a sudden shoots and doesn't understand, what it is until they take that first shot, and it's like,
Right.
you help them out, get them all set up right, and they shoot really good.
Yep. And then it just clicks and then they fall in love with archery like we all did.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, it's and then just get them into it. Sometimes the kids will get the parents into it, and then the parents go crazy, and
Yep.
it's just one of those things that it can be a lot of fun. It's something you can
Yeah.
do probably from maybe 5 years old or a little bit younger
Yeah.
to 70s, 80s, even 90s, as long as you can still you can pull the bow back. And
Exactly.
we can't pull the bow back. You know what? Crossbow.
Crossbow.
Put a crank on it.
Exactly.
you
It's
know,
crossbow season. Yep.
get them out there. It's all that. The only disadvantage, with a crossbow when I had my store is the bolts would get buried in the backstop a little too far.
Right,
So
right.
I did. You could shoot a crossbow. It just I recommended have another target to shoot the crossbow into that was designed to stop them. And other
Oh
than
yeah.
that, I didn't care. You could shoot crossbow all you wanted.
Right,
Recurve combat, you just couldn't shoot broadheads.
right.
Clear up your targets really quick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They
You'll
had
go
a big
through
old
them.
sign, like I forget what the fine was, but there's a big old fine if you get caught shooting a broadhead in the range.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, most of the ranges I go to, they all have to list it no broadheads, in the
yeah.
indoor range, because you never know. You get that new guy doesn't know, whips out their hunting arrow and destroys a target before you know it.
Oh yeah. Like the blocks will take, thousands of shots.
Right.
If you broadheads in them, you're down to hundreds.
Exactly.
Because it's
Yep.
layered foam and the arrow slides between them. Now it will catch some of the layers of foam, but a broadhead goes through the layer and it cuts three places or four places, depending on if it's a three blade or four blade or a two blade.
Yeah.
It slices through them. So the next one slices through it. And if you're hitting several of them, the next thing you know, you have a big chunk falling out.
Yeah. Exactly.
And,
And
and I
once you get
know
those
I know
two
guys that
on,
shoot at the little small block with their broadheads. They realize it's not going to last as long, but
right,
they realize that and don't care because it's their own.
right, right.
So they shoot it up. And one of the things I used to do with some of the targets that get shot up, not ones at range, is take that expanding spray foam insulation
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
spray it in there, cut it
yep,
down and keep shooting because it'll stop.
yeah. I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially like if 3D target and you've shot it up pretty bad and it's not one you can replace the core, just take that expanding foam, squirt it in there.
yeah. Oh yeah, it works great. It really
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, that's some pretty good stuff. I actually
Oh
had a
yeah.
friend of mine. He worked at a place that did foaming of like trailers, commercial,
Oh,
my trailers.
right.
And they'd always, they have to spray a little bit to test it before. So he just took a box. Whenever they sprayed it, he'd spray it in the box. And then once it was full, because they had to test it first before they could spray in the truck.
Right.
So he had a full box of foam. There was our target.
There's
He
your
sprayed
target.
another box, and there was our target. The whole
That's
target was
awesome.
expanding foam.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Now I wouldn't go out and buy cans of it to fill up a box in the for a target. I'd use it for
No,
just so it's too expensive.
it is. It is. But it's good for repairs here and there on certain things.
Yeah. So now in setting up, now we're past the beginner, and we're going to set up somebody that you want to do um, for 3D targets,
Okay.
indoor and outdoor 3D targets. What would you do on setting somebody that comes in and says, hey, or it's been shooting for a while. It's like, I want to get into 3D shooting. What would you do on setting up their bows?
So with their bows, and it depends the skill level again of what they're trying to do. Is it just local club 3Ds or is it my level tournament 3D? Because it really there's actually a huge difference because I participate a lot in the IBO. I do the Northeast Triple Crown, and I also do the National Triple Crown for IBO, which speed really matters because it's unknown. Everything with IBO is unknown distance. So you can't use a rangefinder at all for any of those targets. So with that kind of 3D, speed really comes into play to help make up for your errors. So, you judge a target a little wrong, you need that speed to try to help keep you in the 10. So the faster the setup, the better. Now in my class, the senior, not the senior, the semi-pro class and the pro class, which I'll be going into, we have a speed restriction of 300 feet per second. So you do have those restrictions. You also have to keep in mind. Um, so for if you're looking to get into unknown 3D, then I would absolutely look into lighter arrow setups, a little bit heavier poundage. I always recommend anywhere from 60 to 70 pounds for unknown, just to help you get that speed you need. And then paired with a lighter arrow, we should be able to get you there to really help you with your distance judging. Now, if you're getting into the other side of it with ASA or even backyard 3D or club 3D, speed isn't as important. You still want a faster arrow, um, but it's not as important as it is with IBO. So if someone was looking into just getting into ASA or backyard club 3D kind of stuff, then we would just look into the poundage that's most comfortable for them. I would definitely recommend a 60-pound draw weight just to help with the longer distances of stuff. Um, and then you get to play with the arrow weight a little more than you would with IBO because you don't need as light of an arrow as I would recommend for IBO. So you could kind of play more with like tip weight, um, shaft length, stuff like that, um, instead of IBO where you really want to slim it down as much as possible. I think this year my IBO arrow is 360 grains, which is actually heavy. Last year I shot 320 grain, which is right in the ballpark that worked great for me to make up for my distance judging. Um, and of course, you always want 5 grains per pound. So never go, for me, I shoot 60 pounds, never go below 300 grain arrow because then you're just asking for trouble there.
Yeah.
But but I try to get it kind of as low as I can go. So like I said, this year I'm going to play with the 360 grains and see how that does for judging distance. But otherwise, those are the two I think most important things to ask is which side of 3D are you looking to get into? Because it really plays a difference with how you're going to set that bow up, with how you want it to perform for what you're going to do.
Yeah. Now, how would you set up differently if they wanted to hunt?
So if they wanted to hunt, um, it would be different in, of course, the bow, and then also the arrow weight comes into play there. The whole dispute of heavier arrow or lighter arrow, all that stuff. I would set it up to almost like my ASA setup. So my hunting arrows are usually around 420 grains. I really didn't buy into the whole FOC battle thing, where you need like a heavy front end, a heavy front load on that to pound through the animal. Because around us, we're just hunting whitetail.
Right.
You don't need a whole lot to really get that thing down. You know what I mean? So usually I stay within the 400s. I like 420, 430 grains total, and that's with a 100 grain point. Other than that, I mean, it's uh, again what is most comfortable with them. Like I like hunting with 60 pounds. I know a lot of guys that like hunting with 70 pounds, and then some other guys that like hunting with 80-pound bows, which again, around us, I don't see the need for it, but if you want to blow your shoulder out, go for it. So
Yeah.
I would normally direct them towards get a 60-pound hunting bow, get your arrow weight around 420, 430. That's what I found performed the best for me. And then from there, it's just deciding on the arrow and the broadhead you want to use, which lately I've been using the Magnus single bevel.
Yeah, they make good broadheads.
They
Um,
do.
I know when I shot my first deer, it was 40 yards away. I was 20 feet up in the tree. And that's back when we had aluminum arrows before carbons were even out.
Yeah, right.
And I had a 2117 full length, 125 grain Muzzy broadhead, 52 pounds. I
Yep.
shot that deer turned around. I think the fletching stopped it from going all the way through.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I just almost passed clean through that deer at 52 pounds from that
Yep.
distance with the big old heavy arrow. Because anybody knows, those were real heavy arrows. You know,
They
they,
are.
they're a very heavy arrow. And I
Yep.
don't know what total weight was. I don't have any of them around anymore to even weigh them to see what it was. But, it
Right.
wasn't a light arrow. And at 52 pounds, because that's
Yeah.
I could pull at the time.
Right.
And it would go up to 70. And it took me a while shooting and shooting and shooting. And then okay, now then about 55. And then I got to about 58, and it just took forever to get above that 60 mark. Then once I got above 60, then it was really quick to go to 70. And that's where I
Right.
shot most time after that. And
Right.
my hunting arrows are heavier than my other arrows. They're when I set up a set of arrows, they come in heavier spine than what they were marked. So they weighed more.
Right.
So when I went to replace them with my new arrows, which were marked correctly at the spine I had, they're PSC arrows. PSC goes 100, 200, 300, and 400. 400 is the heavier spine. So the bigger the number, the heavier spine. Not like most of the other ones. It's the smaller number is the heavier spine because
Yeah.
they do it by the deflection.
Right.
So they are 400 grain or 400 spined arrows. Well, the ones I shoot all the time are 300. So I had some weight tubes. So I'm adding weight tubes so I get them all the same weight. And
Right.
so they're right around a 400 and some grain arrow. I haven't weighed them recently, and I forget
Yeah.
now what they were. Um, my arrows that I shot normally, I think was about 370 at 70
Okay.
pounds.
Right. Wow.
So
Yeah.
I was right there, not much above the minimum they can on them. And,
Right.
that's what I shoot at my target arrows. And the hunting ones are a little bit heavier just because of the way they originally started. And I don't
Right.
want to rechange all my sights because they're your 20 changes, your 30, 40, 50, all the pins
Oh
change
yeah.
because you have a
It
lighter
all
arrow.
depends.
So,
Right.
and there's not that much of a gap. So I use them. And,
Yeah.
you know, I routinely would get pass throughs. Not a problem with it. At
Right.
70 pounds and that heavy of an arrow, unless you hit a big bone, there's a
Yeah.
there's a part of the shoulder blade that you ain't getting through.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, the only way
Yeah.
through that bone in there, and you look at the shoulder anatomy of a deer, it's fairly flat. I go through the shoulder blade a lot. I seem to go through
Mhm.
that. But if you get a little bit further up, there's that bone part that sticks up.
Yeah.
And if you hit that, you're not going through it.
You're not.
You know, a muzzy
No.
is not bunching through it. And if
No.
the cut on contact, it ain't going through it either. And
No.
I know muzzies are pretty tough. When I had my store, I was shooting late and I had my broadhead target up and I was shooting my broadhead target and I should have just went home, but I didn't. I was trying to get ready for hunting season and I missed. Hit the
Mm.
concrete block wall
Oh,
with my muzzy. So
oh
I go up
man.
there and I was like, oh man, everything's destroyed, right? I get up
Yep.
there, the broadhead's stuck in the concrete block
Wow.
and the insert's cracked in half and I cracked back about an inch of the shaft.
Okay.
So I cut it back. My son was 5, 6 years old. So turned in one of his arrows. I cut it back, far enough past it. I don't have to worry about it. And I
Right.
took the broadhead and I pulled it out. It's still in my box of arrows that I shoot. I still use that same broadhead. I couldn't tell you which one it was. It did not hit the
Really?
broadhead at all
Wow.
into a concrete block wall.
Wow. That's
At 70
crazy.
pounds at 20 yards.
Yeah. Wow. I can't believe it. That is great. Holy
You'd
cow.
have thought it had whole completely destroyed the shaft and the arrow, the broadhead,
Yeah.
everything. No, didn't hurt
Everything.
nothing but the insert in the shaft.
Wow. That is unbelievable. That's awesome.
And they're it's the PSC Comp Pros is what I shoot. They're 1,000 straightness.
Okay.
I don't normally shoot anything but those. When I
Okay.
started doing a lot of with aluminums before the carbons come out, I shoot.
Yeah.
I switched to double X 78s when I started buying arrows because those are
Okay.
1,500 straightness. But the
Hmm.
problem with aluminum, as you shoot it for a year, you can't group into the X rings anymore. They just won't group there. You get a new dozen, now you're back in the X ring again.
Right.
Because
Right.
over time, the aluminum fatigues so much quicker than carbon.
It really does. I actually still shoot aluminum for indoor target archery. I shoot Easton 2712s,
Yeah.
and they've been great. I love them for indoor. But same thing, like you said, they're heavy. That they're just heavier than carbon, no matter what. So originally, when I set those up, I had 300 grain points for indoor, 20 yards. That's strictly what I'll shoot those for. So the 2712 with 300 grain points, they were like 660 grains altogether. And then I just bumped it down to 250 grains, 250 grain point weight, and they're a little lighter. They're still like 600 grain, but which is crazy how much heavier they are than like another carbon 27.
Yeah. Well, I shoot the 2512s. And at the time,
Okay.
the bow I had set up originally with it was a PSE. And
Mm-hmm.
rest was one of those, it had the two prongs. And in order to adjust the inside one, you had to take the screw up, take the outside pin out, and adjust the inside one and put the pin back on. So it was a real challenge to get it set up be perfectly because if the inside had to move, you had to take the outside on and then move it and get back and finally
Oh
I got it
wow.
all set up so it shot perfectly with the 2512s. And
Right.
so when I sold it, I told the guy, it's like unless you change the rest, you're only going to shoot 2512s. It shoots perfectly with those arrows. 2512s, 100 grain tip. It's going to shoot perfect until
Right.
you change rests. And,
Right.
once you change rest, then, upgrade to something newer and then you can switch arrows if you want. But,
Yeah.
that bow was set up for those. And if you'd shoot through paper, it shot perfect holes,
Yeah.
which doesn't tell you anything really other than how the arrow's doing at that point in time.
Right.
Um, that I know a lot say that, you got to shoot through paper to see how it's shooting. No, I can take a bow that somebody's shooting that's getting terrible tears and I can get a good tear out of it.
Right.
It's your form.
Right. It's your form.
Lot of it's the form. Uh,
Most of
where,
it.
where paper comes in is I want to see what that arrow is doing through time. So I'm going
Right.
to shoot through it at 5 feet. What's the arrow doing as it leaves the bow? Move
Yeah.
back to 10 feet. What's it doing now? What's it doing? That'll tell you if you're under spine for your arrow. Because your arrows
Right.
start turn left, turn right. That means it's fishtailing, up and
Yep.
down, left to right, or however it's doing. You might get a terrible tear right away, but if you go 20 yards away, you're going to get a perfect tear just about every time. Because by then
Right.
it's stabilized.
It corrected itself by
Yeah,
then.
it's correct by then. So, where do you use it? Use it
Yeah.
the little grain of salt because it's not always there. Um,
Right.
I know back before I had my store about a couple years before I got my store, I bought a Matthews Q2.
Okay.
And I was in the archery club here in town, one of them, and so I got it all set up. I set up. Now this is before I even knew how to set up a bow. And
Mhm.
I just said it. So I went down, they had a paper tuner down there, and I went down, I shot. It's like, oh, first shot, perfect hole. Okay, it must be good.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so you can do them. It's just one of those things that you just have to look at and know what it's actually telling you. Uh,
Right. That's the thing. I think as long as you know what it's telling you and what you're using it for to find, then it's a great tool. Honestly, I use my paper tuner constantly. I'm
oh,
I shoot through paper a lot. Um, mainly when I first set up a new bow. Um, like I said, I do a lot of tournament archery, so I'm always trying to get it set up and get it shooting through paper to where I know it's tuned close up. I know it's coming out of the bow straight. But then after that, after it's completely set up and I know it's tuned and good to go, I'll still go out in the morning and I'll shoot a couple through paper. And all that I know it's going to show me is whether I have good form or not. Because I
right,
know at this point, if there's a little bit of a tear or it looks a little funny, there's something I'm doing. So it's just helping me, make sure that I'm in perfect form or at least close to every time I'm shooting the arrow. I actually got talking to Tim Gillingham at one of the IBO World tournaments. And he said he shoots through paper. He probably shoots 1,000, 2,000 arrows a year through paper. He's constantly shooting through paper, which I found myself end up not because of him, but doing as well. I probably shoot a ton through paper, and that, like I said, all it is just checking form at that point. Once you know the bow's tuned and it's shooting good, it's good to go. I'm not going to retune it. If it tears or anything from there, I know it's something I'm
Something you're
doing.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I can go from there, whether filming myself or having someone look at me and tell me if I'm doing something wrong.
Well, one of the things that I used to carry with me is a string that was my draw length, and I'd put it around my thumb and hook my release to it and go through my whole shot process. And
Yep.
that string should lead straight to your target. If it doesn't, your form is off.
Right.
So you can go through and okay, it's hanging up on my thumb. What's going on? Is it going to the right, hanging up, or left, or what's it doing? And
Yep.
I've used that. It's like okay, something's not feeling right. I don't know what it is. So you know, so I go through and I shoot. It's like okay, now it's shooting straight off my hand. Okay, now I'm back. That's a quick check you can take when you don't have a paper tuner with you to check
Right.
the form. Like
Right.
we talked earlier, it shows more about form than
Yeah.
it does how the bow's tuned. Because
Right.
bad form is not, you're not going to get a good tear. If you do, you're trying to counteract your bad form.
Exactly.
Once you get it set up, that's where using it, you need to know how to use it and what you're using it for. Like you talked about, it's like you're using it just check your form
Yeah.
out because the bow leaves, or the arrow leaves the bow perfectly because you set it up to do that.
Right.
And if you're not getting it to do that, either you're not adjusting the right thing or
Yep.
your form is off. And
Yep.
if you know your form is good, then you can go from there. I was at one forum and they said from day one the bow he could never get it to have a good tear, no matter what he did, you know, couldn't get a
Hmm.
good tear. And well, let's check. They chest all kinds of stuff. How
Right.
about if you take a video because you probably got a death grip on the bow.
Yep.
When it shoots, you've got a death grip. You're twisting it because how your hand is gripping it. You're twisting it, and you're never going to get a good tear if you're twisting the bow.
Right. Right. No.
So if you're having problems like that, you know what? Take a video. Watch
Yeah.
this
Exactly.
podcast, show you how to take the video, and show one of us.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Exactly.
So, how would you set up like an Olympic archer bow?
So honestly, I don't have a whole lot of setup with or experience with recurves or Olympic archers. I mainly stayed in the compound realm. Um, Honestly, for me, if I had someone that came to me and was like, "I want to be an Olympic archer and recurve, would you be able to help me out?" I would actually tell them, "Listen, I'm sorry, I'm not the guy for you, but my friend Rich Kirshner at our local club, Tioga Bowman, he could teach you everything. He still shoots barebow recurve, does it at a very high level. So I would direct them to the person that could better help them than I could. Um, just because I really haven't dabbled in it at all. I've really, since day one of picking up a bow, have just stayed with the compounds. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to do a whole lot for them there.
Now, what about if you're going to Olympics with the compound?
So with Olympics for a compound, that would be obviously a different story where we could really get you set up. So I have started doing more of like 50, 60 meter stuff in USA archery, looking to get more into the USA archery realm and world archery realm, which they concentrate a lot on 50 and 60 meter. So from there, I would set them up with a good target bow, whatever brand they prefer. Um, Poundage, we would want almost around the same with 3D. You would really want around 60. You could probably get away with 50. Um, 55 would be all right, but I would definitely say like 55 to 60 if you're going to do that because you're going to be shooting 50 meters, which is just over 50 yards. I believe it's 53 or close to 55 yards. Um, and then we'd set you up with a skinny arrow. So with shooting that distance and only shooting that distance, you would want a skinnier arrow than anything else because the wind drift and other things like weather is really going to come into play with your shot. depending on how windy it is that day, will make your arrow go left or right on that target. So a skinnier arrow will really help to fly through that air and cut through that wind without it pushing it so much. So we would definitely go towards one of those skinnies. Easton makes a lot of really great arrows. I would always recommend their Pro Tours. It's their higher quality line of arrows, but those Pro Tours have been proven over and over that they are one of the best, like Olympic style arrows that you can use, and a lot of recurve and Olympic archers use them as well. So that's what I would steer them towards. The point weight, I'd probably keep them within like the normal 100, 120, maybe 150 grain points, somewhere around there. Again, it all depends on how the arrow flies, and you would really go deep into group tuning. At least that's what I have. With doing 50 and 60 meter stuff is taking those skinnies, getting it set up right, make sure everything's level, shooting good, shoot it through paper good at 5 feet, and then take it outside and start shooting 50, 60 meters, whichever you want to do. And see how those arrows group. If they're way spread out like it was shot like buckshot, then all right, we could micro tune the rest a little bit or do a couple other things and really get those arrows to group well at that distance.
Yeah, that's a big thing is getting your arrows to group. That's the important
Yeah,
part. And
it
yeah,
is. It is.
I know at the closer ranges with my bows, especially like my hunting bow, which is, I shoot field tips when I'm practicing, but I shoot with
Right.
broadheads, and they do not fly the same. They do not hit in the same point.
No,
But I don't care because that bow's set up to shoot the broadheads, not the field tips. So when I
exactly.
practice with field tips, they're not hitting where I'm aiming, but I aim at the same spot as long as they're grouping. That's good. I'm
Right.
just kind of going through motions with the bow. But you can tune your broadheads. I've set up like a dozen arrows and then put broadheads on them, and it never fails. There's one that just will not tune.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do mine a little bit different on my hunting arrows. Of course, I use the Muzzy, and there is something called a U bar. I don't know if they even
Okay.
make them anymore, but it's a coned washer. And you put that on, you put a rubber O-ring on, and then you put your broadhead in. So now you can
Mhm.
attune the alignment between the broadhead and your fletching. Now I use 4-inch feathers.
Okay.
You see in the videos that you me shooting, it's always with feathers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I started in the 60s when there's options for feathers or feathers. You either had
Yeah.
wood or you had barred feathers, parabolic or shield cut. That was best.
Right.
You had feathers. It
Right.
just never switched. I'm not fond of vanes. I've always shot feathers. So
Right.
nice thing about feathers, they have a little more drag, so they're going to be less effect on, your broadhead steering it. But I
Right.
take and I line up, because it's three fletched and three blade. So I'll set the arrow down and I'll line the broadhead so they're sitting the same orientation as the feathers.
Yep.
And by having that rubber O-ring on, I can tweak it a little tighter, a little looser until and I'll shoot it and see what it does. Because I'll
Yep.
mark them, with a little, like a little white paint or something across the broadhead and the bushing and onto the shaft, so I know it's always aligned. And then
Right.
I'll shoot, and you can tweak them a little bit and get them all grouped. So that group, I set my broadheads up so I could shoot 1-inch groups. My broadheads. Now I
Yeah.
know the broadheads are shooting in exact same spot. If you don't have that, it's like you got a 6-inch group with your broadheads.
Right.
Now I got a 6-inch group, and now how close am I getting to there? So you might have an 8 or 10-inch group spacing if you're shooting at unknown yardage.
Right.
Off by 5 feet can make a big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
you know you don't know where it's going and don't have a good group, and that's one of the things
No.
when you're shooting 3D or hunting is you know how big is your group.
Yep.
You've got a 3-inch group, you have a 6-inch kill zone, so now you have to be within 3 inches of being exactly where you want.
Right.
How many yards is that?
Right.
it
Right.
could be 5 yards. So you might have an effective range of 15 yards
Yep.
because your group's so big.
Yeah, exactly. Which another tuning method I use a lot for the tournament scene, and I even do now with my hunting arrows, is knock tuning. Which again, going back through paper, when I set up like a fresh dozen of arrows for indoor or outdoor 3D, or even now hunting, I'll fletch them, put the nocks on, put my point weight, whatever it is, and start, and then shoot one through paper. Perfect bullet hole, nice. Put that aside, number it, go to number two, and I'll shoot each one through paper. Because, like you said, you had that one arrow that just didn't agree, that would not shoot with the other ones. Usually that will help identify that one because I'll come to another one. I get a slight tear with that one. But the other two I just shot are perfect bullet holes. So I'll just rotate the knot a little bit, put it back on, usually to the next configuration. Like if you're doing three fletch and you have your one cock vein up, then I'll go to the next one to the right, have that one up instead, shoot it through paper. And 9 out of 10 times now that one is shooting a bullet hole after I rotate the knock once or twice. And then from talking to a bunch of other pros, they do it too with every single one of their arrows, making sure that that arrow is doing the exact same thing that the previous arrow was doing coming out of that
Yeah.
bow. And that really helps with group tuning, getting there, all that stuff is just making sure that the arrow is doing the exact same thing every time. Doesn't matter which arrow you use. There's a ton of times that I've been in league or even on a tournament line, and there will be a guy with two or three arrows separated from his other ones in his quiver, and he's like, those are my good arrows. Those are my best arrows. It's like, why are they your best arrows? He's like, oh, I just feel like they shoot better than the others. But why? And they can never tell me why, which I know why. It's because those three are probably coming out the way you want them to from the bow. They're probably shooting really good through paper. Yet the other ones in your quiver, you just haven't knock tuned them to where they're doing the same thing as your other arrows. So I really have seen a difference um, in a lot of my shooting with doing that to all my arrows, which it is painstaking. It does take a lot of time. So you would really want to be able to have your own paper tuner or be able to use it all you want in a local shop or something because it takes a while to shoot a full dozen of arrows, rotate it, find out which one it does, and make sure they all do the same thing.
Well, and all of your shafts have a heavy point
Right,
where the seam is.
right,
So there's several ways you can find which is the heavy point and where do you want that heavy point to be. So
right,
a lot of times you can't really see it on the shaft. You can't tell where it's at.
right.
Sometimes the aluminums you could kind of tell where it was at because the
Hmm.
pattern would interrupt at that point. Um,
Right.
but that's one thing you can do. Start off with your bare shafts. That's something that you can try, and
Yeah.
see which ones. See if they're all grouping the same. Or find that sometimes they'll float them because the heavy
Yep.
side's going to go down. So now you
Yep.
float them. You know where it's at. You're going to mark the top, and then do so. You have all your whole dozen. You floated them. You know where the top is, and now
Yep.
all that's all lined up perfect. And then
Right.
now, do you want to put your cock feather on that line or on the heavy part? So which ways it work? They're going to be all the same. Um,
Exactly.
I know one of the things that um, I learned many years ago is putting your loop on. How you put the loop on can make a big difference on how you're going to group.
Right.
I had a guy call me up one time when I had my store. This was 20, a little over 20 years ago. And he said, "Can you install or set my bow up to shoot two arrows at the same time?" He called the other two shops and they said, "No." They just said,
Right.
"No." I was like, um, "Okay. Um, you can't afford them if you come in during hours, but come in just before I close and we're going to play."
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
we spent probably hour and a half setting it up, but the store was closed. So I didn't
Yeah.
care. This is kind of fun. But you couldn't
Right.
afford me during hours because it had been, hour of my time. but
Right.
we played around, and we eventually got it to where the spacing between the arrows varied no more than about a 16th of an inch.
Wow.
Every shot was consistently the same group. And we went through a
Right.
whole bunch of stuff, you know. Um, Fortunately, it wasn't a center shot design riser. It was the old
Okay.
style, so we used two stick-on rests. So we
Yep.
put them on there, got them on there, set them up, and he wanted to use a release. Fingers you put one in between them and one about one in the bottom, and you'd pull back that way. So
Right.
we had to put a loop on there. So we tried all kinds of spacing between alignment, between the fletching. That, therefore, that was making a difference. We finally got that where that was somewhat consistent. We
Yep.
tied the loop in between the two because you have to put a knock point for um, one of them so they don't slide
Okay.
for the
Right.
bottom one. You got to put a knock
Right.
point on there. And we tried, everything. And finally, we ended up tie the knot above the top one and below the bottom one. So
Okay.
now we had a consistent pull between the two. It was straight between the two because we're pulling on top and bottom. And that's where we got
Right.
our best grouping. And so when I tie on a loop, I don't use a knock point on my bows. I
Oh,
For 20 years I've never put a knock point on my bow.
really?
Yep. I never
Wow.
knock because I'm tying a loop on there. So what I do
Right.
is because I have lasers and levels that I set bows up with. So
Yep.
um, in setting up the elevation, I'll get the bow itself where it's level, and then I'll set the rest where it needs to be, and then I'll put another level on the string to make sure it's plumb, so it's straight up and down. And
Yep.
now that's square and plumb, and I'll get the arrow in there, and then I'll move the arrow back. I'll put a little level on the front of it that hangs on it, clamps onto the shaft, right
Yeah.
as far out of the hip I can get without hitting the insert, because that'll screw it up. So I go at the tip of the shaft, and now I adjust that knot. I tie my loop so it's loose on there, so it's not really tight yet. And I'll get that arrow, the knot point set where it's perfectly level. And
Hmm.
I'll tie the knot above and below that. I'll make sure it's all set, and then I get that knot tight. So it's tight against the nock. There's no little slop on there. That knot cannot move up and down.
Okay.
And I'll get
Right.
that tied on, and now that gives you that perfect flight through there. Now the only thing
Yep.
that wouldn't affect it is if you got the rest too high. Now it's not really in the center, or too low. Um,
Yeah.
so that would be the only thing you could try. But if
Yep.
if you're not getting that good tear and you got good form, say we're shooting out a shooting machine, so the form goes away. And if you're
Right.
not getting good tear, maybe you need to move it up a little bit or down a little bit. And one of the things you can do is you can rotate that loop on that string because it's spiraled up. So you can turn
Yep.
it just a little bit for your peep alignment. And that's not going to change anything because if you go turn it like a quarter turn to get that peep to line up, that's not going to change it. Now, if you have to go too much, when I tie them on, because I wax the strings before I tie them, you're not
Yep.
untying them. If we need to
Right.
change it, you're cutting it off, putting a new one on.
Right.
You're not untying my loops when I put them on because they
Yeah.
just don't come loose. And they don't.
No. Fine.
Now, I haven't set up any of the super short axle bows,
Right.
but I don't know why that wouldn't work on those. I had somebody say, well, you got to put a knock point on it. You got to tie a knock point on it. Well, now then that shifts it up.
It
Because
does.
if you hook your release below your arrow, you're pulling, that string goes an angle through that knock, which can make it pop off the string. And now that as it shoots, it's pushing down. And the logic I use behind that is take a pencil and put it on the table. Take your finger and push on the eraser, push straight towards the tip of the arrow or the pencil. What's that pencil?
Uh,
Move straight. Now turn your hand just slightly, move, like a half a degree. Now push. What's that arrow do? It goes off at an angle. So by not doing that, that arrow starts off at an angle
uh,
and it has to correct. So
right.
it was setting up, like shooting out of a shooting machine, or your form is you got good form.
Right.
Now you can see, okay, I'm a little bit high. Maybe I need to lower that knock point down just slightly and lower the rest down, or
Yeah.
up. I like to put it so it's about the shaft goes, right about halfway through where the burger button is.
Yep.
Now,
Okay.
most people don't know what the burger button is because they don't really use them. It's the bolt that holds your rest on.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the old recurs, the burger button was a button that you screw into there and it had a little button, and then it puts
Yeah.
pressure on the side of the arrow. So when you release with fingers, it always goes off to the side, and that helps straighten your arrow out. You know,
Right.
that's what it
Right.
was for back in finger days.
Yeah. I also like to play with the placement of the arrow on the burger button because I found with my bows is that when I set one up and I'm shooting it, say we're indoor 20 yards target shooting, and I've got my stabilizers on, everything set up, but I just can't. I keep getting a bobble. I just feel like I can't hold it right. Actually, moving that arrow up in the burger hole, and obviously putting a new knock tie or
Right.
D loop on, you would have to move the rest and everything to move it up so it's nice and plumb and square, like you said, with the levels and all that. But moving it up a little bit, a little higher in that burger hole, has actually steadied a lot of people out that we found, and has steadied me out on certain bows. Everything depends on the bow. I'm shooting
Right.
a 39 axle to axle right now, and having the arrow a little higher up in that burger hole actually did help steady things out to where I'm holding a little better. So when you do end up getting to the level where you're playing little things like that, I did find that that helped a lot too.
Yeah, that's good to know. That because you can change them because where is the center force of the bow? Is it
Right,
the exact center between axle to axle? Or is that bow set up so that the center point of the travel is actually a little higher? You
right,
don't know. Uh,
right,
Sometimes you can tell on a drawing machine because you can watch, you can put a level on your arrows, you're drawing it back, is that level staying level the whole process through? If it's
right,
not, then something is not quite on.
right.
But who has a drawing machine that they can do that with?
I know, right?
Yeah, not many. Some of your
No,
stores, your shops will have them.
yeah,
But unless you're doing high end tuning, you're not going to do that for a beginner bow.
no, absolutely
I,
not.
I
No,
I never set up my beginner bows with the levels and lasers because it didn't need it.
right.
And at setting up hundreds of them, I can eyeball it close enough for beginner bow
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
because that's still going to be more accurate than that beginning archer is going to be because they don't
exactly,
have the skill. And that's the thing
exactly.
too. I tell new archers, I used to do this a lot. I actually had some guys send people to me because I knew I wouldn't oversell them. I didn't sell
Right,
them stuff I wanted them to buy. I sold them stuff they needed. And one of the
right.
things that I do is you come in and if a bow didn't come with a stabilizer, which some of the PSEs originally come with a stabilizer, just a hunk of aluminum on, threaded onto it. But
Yeah, yeah,
it was more for looks and a little bit of balance than anything else.
exactly.
But
Right.
I'd put on the cheap $10 stabilizer and have them shoot a
Mhm.
few times. Then I'd put on, back then $10 stabilizer was just, pretty cheap. And then $50 was an expensive one. Now
Oh, well.
$50 is a cheap one. But
Yeah,
so then I put a little bit more expensive one and shoot that. Can you tell the difference? No. Well, then to put more expensive one on. Can you tell the difference? No. Buy the cheap one.
right.
You don't know the difference. Why spend the money?
Exactly.
Now, later on, if they've shot for a year or so, they're going to put that high end stabilizer on there. And it's like, oh, yeah, I feel the difference now.
Right. Exactly.
But you wouldn't have known that you just, okay, now I had to spend an extra $50 for a release. I mean, for a stabilizer when I could have got a cheaper one because I didn't know the difference.
Right.
And we all went through
Right.
that. We start out, we don't know what we need until we shoot. And that's why, the ready
That's
shoot
it.
packages are really good because you've got your bow, you've got your sight, you've got your quiver. Um,
Yep.
you need a release and arrows, which when I had my store, mine come with arrows, half dozen arrows.
Okay.
Um, you still got to pick whether you want feathers or veins and what colors you wanted.
Right.
Because that was the way I sold the Nova bow, because
Okay.
like Walmart and those places sold them, but you couldn't compare price because Mine come with a release. They come with string silencers. They come with arrows and shooting instruction
Yeah.
and
Yeah. You
set
can't.
up. Yeah. I
Yeah.
just had one guy call me up and say, "You think I could?" He bought a bow from one of those other places, and you think I could set the bow? Well, you can install them, but if it's right or not, you don't know. I charge
Right.
$40 to set up a bow,
Hmm.
and I'm also going to give you shooting instruction. And the
Right.
price of my bow also includes 6 arrows. And at that time, I had a release. I included a release because it was one of the, I think the True Fire PSC had the arrows or releases they were selling. I think they were True Fire
Okay.
releases. I forget what the name was. They were, you know, $10 release that time.
Right.
So that's 20 years ago. But, so I had everything you needed except the bow case.
Gotcha.
And the only bow
Wow.
cases I had was soft cases because I had a good deal on some soft cases.
Okay.
Plain old cases, I never stocked them because my difference between my wholesale price and what you go to Walmart was $5. So I wouldn't stock
That's
them. I would, if you want a high end bow case, yeah, we're going to order it in. But I wouldn't
right.
stock cheap ones because it wasn't cost effective for me to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
and it's like, go to Walmart. There's some things I sold cheaper in Walmart. So,
Yeah. I'm sure.
and the guy decided, well, I'm going to take it back. So he took it back because it saved him $40 uh,
Yep.
on the tune up. It also saved him $100 an hour for shooting instruction.
Yeah.
Yes, he'd
Wow.
have to buy arrows, which mine included arrows, and have to
Yeah.
buy release. Now, I don't recommend getting the cheap releases.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, spend 75, $100 or more on a release because
Yeah.
as you probably know the difference between a cheap release and a good quality release. One is how well it shoots and how long it lasts.
It is. It makes a
Now,
huge
I
difference.
have a Scott release wrist strap.
Okay.
I bought it used from a friend of mine that I was in archery club with. He was a rep for Scott at the time. I bought that in, I think it was 95. I still have it. I still shoot it. In
Oh
fact,
yeah.
when you see a video of me doing demo, that's one of the releases I use. And yeah, it's, I haven't had any trouble with it
Right.
in 30 years.
Yeah. 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 With a good quality release, it really makes a huge difference. It will last you a lot longer. And you don't have to really worry about any troubles with it. With some of the other releases, like cheaper releases, even handheld cheaper releases, things start going wrong on them, whether it's the steer, just wear and tear, even general wear and tear, it just ends up
Yeah.
falling apart where you have to end up getting a new one anyways, instead of just investing in a good one right away that and it will last you forever. Really, it could last you forever.
Yeah. And then my other release is a Carter chocolate addiction. And,
Yeah.
and I shoot those a little bit differently. You see those big knobs on them? I took
Yeah.
that off.
Did
It's
you?
sitting in a drawer someplace. I don't need it. I don't want it on there because I
Right.
bury it into my hand. That really, because you see them out on the thumb. You see a lot of them when they have the thumb out there, they're actually
Yeah.
using the thumb to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Well, you went from something that has some good dexterity to something with basically zero dexterity, that thumb, to try and
Right.
fire it. So I bury it back in my hand. And of course, Lumbo used the fingers at the release. I bury it into my second knuckle up. That's where I'm holding it. It's back
Yep.
into my hand. And now on that one, I can take my thumb and I can put pressure on the release with my thumb.
Yep.
So I got pressure on the release, and then as I pull through, it'll fire. Now
Yeah.
it's set up so if I had to force fire it, like I'm at hunting, it's like I'm just tighten my fist up and it'll fire.
Right.
But I still use that, pull through whenever because that's just the way I shoot. And
Yeah, which is good. That's how you want to shoot them.
you know,
With
when
that
when I
intention.
got that when I had in my store, actually the second one, I lost the first one. I was out hunting, put it in my pocket, and down
Yeah.
it was gone. I
Yeah.
couldn't
Oh
find it. You know,
yeah. Yep.
that time was $100 and some release, so I got the Carter chocolate addiction. And when I had my store, the rep from True Fire wanted me to carry True Fire releases. And I says, okay, if Walmart sells it, I won't carry it. And they had a handheld one because I didn't want to. No, you couldn't price compare because I didn't carry those, and Walmart carried the cheap ones anyway. I did
Right.
have a cheap one I got from PSE. I bought from PSE because I was busy
Okay.
at the time. And that's
Right.
what I included with them. If they wanted a better release, then you could get, that was an option that
Right.
you could do. But just starting out, we'd go with that. And they said they had a handheld one. It was about half the price. It was like 75 bucks retail as opposed to 150. And so I got one of those, and you could a lot more travel on that trigger. The
Yeah.
Parker Shotgun and Dixon has no travel. It
Right.
because I used a really hard spring in it. My son
Yeah.
has one with the light spring on it, and as soon as I start, it's like it goes off. It's just too light.
Yeah.
I can't shoot it because I like
Right.
the harder trigger, so I can put a little force on it.
Yep.
So I'm shooting that, and I can shoot it pretty well. It's got the jaws that open up, so
Yeah.
you open the jaws up and hook it around, but it's got so much movement. And what happens when I'm shooting it is I feel that movement, and I start thinking about the movement, and I quit aiming.
Oh,
I
right.
can still shoot it pretty well. It's just I that is my backup to my backup. I keep it in my backpack, when I'm out hunting.
Yeah.
I use the Carter chocolate addiction because it hooks onto
Yep.
the loop. That's what I use. And then I
Right.
have my Scott wrist wrap that I use when it gets really cold.
Oh, okay.
Because I need to feel the release completely in my hand. So my
Yeah.
gloves is pretty much there's not much left of it because it's open, where the index finger and the thumb meet. The fingers are all pretty much shot. So it's basically a little mesh on the back of my hand and
Yeah.
the rest of the glove to hold it there.
Yeah.
So I can use that when it's not too cold. But when it gets really cold, all I need is the index finger out to feel the trigger.
Right.
And then I
Right.
keep it in my pocket. And because it has a hook on it instead of jaws, I can go down the string and I can find the loop and I can hook it up because I know where it's at. So I don't have to
Right.
look at the string. And that's what I like
Yeah.
about my Carter because it hooks to the loop. I just put my string between my ring finger and middle finger and slide down and I grab my release. I can pull. Because I
Yep.
found if you can't hook up without looking at it, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Every time I've looked down or looked away from the deer, I look back up and they're staring at me.
Yep. Yep.
Every
Every
time
time.
I've done it. So I just look at the deer and then follow it down. I can go through my whole process. I don't need to look at anything.
Yep.
And that's what you spend the money on a release. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I actually hunt with a Carter too. I use the just because, which is same idea. It hooks onto the loop. I could just leave it there. It's a thumb button. That's actually the only form of archery I use a thumb button for because I end up having issues with it, just anticipation and stuff like that. So I for everything else I use a hinge, but for hunting I do like the Carter releases for all the reasons you just said. They're great for it. You know.
yeah, I had one time I dropped my release on the concrete floor.
uh,
And guess what broke? The trigger.
of course, of
So I
course.
called them up and I says, I dropped my release, broke the trigger. All right, send it back, we'll fix it. So I paid
Yep.
like $5 in shipping, and I said in there, it's like, okay, don't put the knob back on. I don't use it anyway. So I sent it back to them. They sent me back to release, no knob, fixed.
Nice.
It cost
Nice.
me $5 and change to ship it back to them.
Yeah, most of them have like a lifetime warranty on them. They'll fix them. I know at least True Ball does. Carter's been really good with repairs as well. That's actually the only Carter that I use. All the other releases are True Ball releases, but they have if anything goes wrong on them, or they stop shooting well, there's just something wrong. Send it back, and they'll fix it for you for free and
Yeah,
send it back. You might have to pay shipping like you did, the postage or whatever to send it, but they'll fix it as long as you bought that release new from them, they'll always guarantee it.
yeah. And I dropped it. It wasn't the fault
Yeah,
of the release. I dropped
yeah,
it. It's like, and I told him, it's like, hey, I dropped it. The trigger broke. It's like, oh, send it back.
right.
We'll fix it. It's okay.
Yeah, which
Send
is
it back.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
And a while back, I actually had the CEO of Trueball on, and we talked about their releases.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, oh, you know, when you think of high quality releases, think of Carter and Stanislavski, and
Yep.
those are the two top names that come out. And then after
Right.
talking to him, it's like, well, True Ball has some really cool stuff,
Oh, they have a
some
lot of
really
great.
nice stuff. And
They
yeah,
do.
it's one of those things that they also have the low end stuff, the mid
Yep.
range, the high end stuff,
Yep.
and at my level and your level, we're not going to go with the low end releases. We're going to go with the high end
No.
release because we expect that performance out of them. I don't want to have a release that I feel the trigger moving on. I want to have something
Right.
that's nice, crisp release.
Exactly.
That's what I'm looking for in a release. And
Yep.
I almost never shoot the True Fire handheld just
Yeah.
because
No.
it's got too much travel in it and you can't get the travel out, and
Yeah.
it has the other style of jaws. But when the rep says, here, let me send you one of those so you can see what you think of it, and it's like, oh, for somebody that wants to get into it, that would be an expensive way to get into it,
Right.
and,
Right.
and try out the handheld. Now I would never recommend that style of release to a new shooter,
No. No.
because they're gonna smack themselves.
They are. They're gonna either smack themselves or they're gonna let go of the release, and that's gonna end up in the back of the riser. I've
Oh,
seen it a couple of times.
oh, that reminds me. I seen a post. I forget which site it was on. The guy said about halfway through the draw, the bow goes off. Like, bow goes off? No, I can't do that. And I said,
Right.
and it messed up the yoke and all kinds of stuff. Well, after reading more comments, he'd draw about halfway through, and he says, "Okay, do you have an arrow on it?" "Yeah, I have an arrow on it. It's just fine. The release is
Mhm.
on it." So he's drawn back halfway through. The release is out of his hand. The release is
Yeah.
still hooked to his string.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
dude, you're drawing too much weight. You can't hang on to the release.
Right. Right.
It's
That
not the
actually
boat's
just
fault, it's yours.
Yeah, exactly. That actually just happened. I was just at the Lancaster Classic in Pennsylvania, a huge one of the biggest national tournaments of the year for indoor season. And on the line, a guy actually let go of his release. And I'm sitting there, Dan McCarthy is right over there. And I went to say something, and all of a sudden you hear a whack. And then you literally could see the release skating across the floor in front of everybody while they're at full draw. And he let go of his release. And it really stunk. It took him out of the tournament because it cracked his cable rod. It also put a huge dent in the back of his riser, messed up his blade. It was just a mess. But that's one of the things you really got to be careful for is just make sure you got your hand on that release. Don't let go. And it's always what I'm afraid of when I first put a handheld in someone's hands. I always, first thing, I've seen it happen too many times. First thing I tell them, do not let that thing go. Use your thumb, or if you're using a hinge, rotate through it, but never ever let go of it.
Right. Well, and then two, where it's in your hand. If you have your release so it's on between your pad and that first joint. Now that is where you're holding the fingertips. How much strong are you at the fingertips?
Right.
It's easy to pull it out. Just to try it, take your fingers and put your fingers, just the pads together, and pull and see how hard it is
Exactly.
to keep your fingers from opening up. Now bury your hands to the second knuckle and
Yep.
curl that hand around. Now see how much stronger you are. So I buried into my hand so I don't use my fingers themselves.
Right.
Do it. All I'm doing is I'm wrapping around it, let my hand do it. So now I don't have to have the strength of my fingertips. Let it curl back in there further. Now it's buried in my hand. And now all I got to do is keep my hand closed. I don't have to worry about pulling with my fingertips. How
Right.
many people can grab onto something and pull with their fingertips?
Yeah. Exactly. It's not happening.
No.
You need it up to that second knuckle, and that's where I have mine is buried in that second knuckle with my fingers flat to the target like that, and it has that hook. Nothing's coming out
Right.
of there.
Well, and two, it buries into your hand further, so you can't use your thumb to pull the trigger because the trigger's
Right.
there. I take my thumb is actually putting pressure on my release,
Yep.
so I can't pull the trigger that way. but it's buried far enough that I just make a fist, and it does force that trigger to go off because it's got such small travel. Uh,
Right.
you can see that it doesn't really move. And
Yeah,
that's why it's in there as a fist. I don't have to worry about hanging on to it with my fingers. And
exactly.
that might be what that guy is doing he's just trying to hold on with his fingertips.
Could be. It could. It definitely could be.
Yeah.
So
I hadn't thought
it's a
about that until we started
shame.
talking about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's a shame to see, and like I said, it really stunk for him because it took him out, and we were probably 3/4 away through the shoot. And that tournament, it's a long tournament. To shoot a 600 round, it takes 4 hours,
Oh
and he
yeah.
was probably 3 hours into it when it happened, and now he's done. It really stunk to see that happen.
Yeah.
So
And even if it did not hurt the bow, say it just hurt the bow. Now what
right,
you thinking about? It's like, oh man, that
yeah,
I mean, is it going to do it again? And once you start thinking
exactly,
it's going to do it again, it's going to do it again. Because what do you
yeah,
have?
yep,
And and that's part of the mental game that we have to play, as an archer or any other sport or anything else you're doing in the mental game. Because I don't take you
absolutely.
out of it. You know,
Oh,
what do you focus on? You say, okay, don't miss the X ring. So
yeah.
what you tell your mind, what does it remember? Miss X ring, mix X ring. They don't
Yeah.
understand that. Don't. You
Yeah.
miss
No.
X ring. So if you focus on center X, center X, center X, what are you going to hit? You're focused on the center X. You're going to hit the center of the X.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's a lot of mental game that we have to get over as archers is focus on where you want the arrow to go and tune everything else out.
Exactly. And that's one of the hardest things I think, especially with indoor archery, is just the mental game of it. Because man, it's tough sometimes. It's tough. I know, even at leagues, I'll be just I say out of it, but I'm shooting and I'm not thinking about it. I'm just doing my thing. But as soon as I go, oh, I'm clean so far. I shot nothing but X's and tens. That next arrow, without a doubt, is going to be a nine every
Yeah,
single time. Like you can't, you just got to tune all that stuff out and not think about it because you almost in a way sabotaging yourself. It's crazy how much the mental game could really play into your game.
yeah, and you start thinking it's like, okay, I got I got tens, I got nine of them, I got to shoot 10 arrows, and again
Right.
that last one, and now you think it's okay, you lost your focus to how you got there, and you just got to
Yeah.
keep going through, and when you're shooting, when I was in high school, I was on a rifle team, and the prone perfect was 100 points because we had 10 targets, and they were actually 10 rings. And on
Okay.
those, the nine ring is 22 is what we shooting. The nine ring was the diameter of the 22.
Oh wow.
So you take, one of those safety pins, just
Yep.
half of a safety pin was the 10 ring.
Wow.
But if you're off by more than half the width of a 22, you got a nine.
Yeah. Wow.
So, uh, you try for that perfect prone. You
Yeah.
along. I never hit the 100. I'd get 99, 98s. There's always one I'm throwing up just half the distance of a 22. That's basically 10 thousandths,
Right. Right.
you know, or
Yeah.
or 100 thousandths off of being perfect
Yeah.
dead center. And it don't take much to get off by that. And then
No.
not kneeling and standing, and they drop about 10 points each time you go, from 90s to 80s to 70s, in that range, just because you're not
Right.
as steady. Um, yeah, the same logic applies to shooting archery targets. You get 5 spots, and you're shooting that fifth one, and you mess it up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I looked at too was when you're shooting, let's say you shoot top left on a 5 spot, top left, top right, middle, bottom left, bottom right. And for some
Okay.
reason, that last target is always not good. For some reason, you blow that last target.
Hmm.
Well, shoot the arrows in the same order. Now, start with bottom right, bottom left, middle, top right, top left.
Right.
Same order, same order. Now, all of a sudden, your number one target isn't grouping. That's an arrow problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So take that one out and, put X on or whatever, take that out and put another
Yeah.
one. That's why you can tell, um, you've got your dozen arrows, what's going to group.
Right.
Shoot them in that order. And if they're all hitting right there in the X's, okay, good. Grab your next five and shoot all of those are in there. If you got one that's off, say your middle target is off, then
Yep.
shoot them in a different order. And that'll take two. So a lot of times when you're shooting, by the time your fifth arrow, you get a little bit tireder and maybe your form's not right. That's why I said switch the order
Right.
because your first arrow's good. Second, by the time you get to your fifth arrow's off.
Right.
So you shoot them in the same order. And then okay, if it's arrows off, but now then you're going to shoot your arrows 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that'll take care of okay, is it you or is it the arrow?
Exactly.
So you shoot the arrows in the same order, but shoot the targets in a different order, and that'll tell you if it's you or the arrow. So,
Right.
so you don't shoot them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, going the other direction. If that last one is always off, now then shoot the arrows in the opposite order. And now then, okay, I took the fact that this arrow, this fit number 5 arrow, was shot number 5. Well, now you're going to shoot it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now then, if that last arrow is with it, now it's it's you. By the time you get to your last arrow, you're doing
Yep.
something different.
Exactly, which is why I like to number my arrows. And also, like I said, going back to what I said before with shooting every single arrow through paper, kind of eliminating that right away before even going to the target. Because then I know if I'm missing that fifth one, for one, I can keep an eye on the arrow. I have it numbered, I know what it
Right.
is. So if I see something funny with it, even after all the tuning processes that I go through, I'll go, all right, let me shoot it again. Same thing, just that acting funny. I'm like, all right, that arrow's in timeout, and you have it
Yeah.
numbered so you know you can identify it, which one it is, and get rid of it, shoot another one then. And like you said, eliminate whether it's you or the arrow by shooting it opposite, or even, getting to that fifth arrow that you're having problems with and just waiting, give it a couple of seconds, take a couple of breaths, then go and shoot that, and it might help.
Yeah, it's generally
So
a determined. You've got plenty of time to shoot your arrows, unless
yeah,
you
you have
take
4
forever.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's about 45 seconds per arrow.
Right. You have more than enough time.
Yeah, you get more than enough time to let down if you need to. If something don't feel
Yeah.
right, let down, and that's the thing. When you draw back, if it don't feel right, don't try and tweak your hand while you're full draw. That never
Right.
works.
It
Let
doesn't.
down, reposition. And that's why I always teach go through. You have a process you go through
Yep.
every time you go through the same process. Now mine is I open my hand up, put the bow in here, relax my hand as I tilt it down. That's what I do every time I do that. And then I always start from, once I started getting a sling that held the bottom of the bow. Now,
Yeah.
either I'm resting on my hip or I use the sling. If I have a quiver on, I use that. Or if I got my safety belt on, I have one on there. So I hold it at the
Right.
bottom, I get it all ready, put a little pressure on the string, and then I come up, lean forward, straighten the arm out, and draw back. If,
Yep.
if you want a different process, go for it.
Right.
Whatever's
Right.
comfortable for you.
Yeah.
You hear stories of guys that just goofing around and they do it and then they start shooting good. So now they do it every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Oh
want to
yeah.
lean way back and shoot, if you can do it consistently,
Yeah. As long as you can do it every single time the same and do it consistently, then hey, if it works, it works.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
we had all kinds of information for our listeners on setting up bows and things to look for. And this has been really good getting some good information out of you. And just remember, we'll put some links in there if you want to get a hold of you.
yeah.
We can, I'm sure you'd be glad to help anybody out that has the questions and um,
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
you know maybe not on a weekly basis, but um, you know that's a coach and you pay for your coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You like to say that free advice is worth what you paid for it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But we're going to give you some advice, and then if you want more detailed advice, get all of us. We can set something up where we can meet weekly or whatever, and there's you know going to be some kind of a cost in that because it does take us a lot of time to do that. But hey,
Yep.
if you want us to look at it, get us some information. We'll take a look at it and give it to you. And that's what we're providing is some
Yeah.
free information, and listen to the podcast and watch the videos that I've created and everybody else has created, and we'll put a link into your YouTube channel, and
Yeah.
check out some of the videos that you have there and information. And we could have brought it up, but I didn't think about it.
No, it's okay.
It could have shared a screen on it and everything.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah, we'll leave a link in there so you can go out to YouTube channel and check out yours and go out and check out my YouTube channel. And you said your
Yep.
YouTube channel was just your name, right?
Yeah, it's you could just look up Sean Royster, Seanroyster, and my videos will come right up.
Good. Well, we'll look at that. So yeah, it'd be interesting. I always like watching other videos for other archers because I learned from it as well.
Yeah, me too.
What you're doing a little different than what I'm doing. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna try it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I
you
do
know,
it all the time.
and try it and see, and I'm gonna try it one or two times and see if it's gonna work. Now I
Right.
wouldn't do about a changing right before a tournament or something, but
Right.
you
Right.
know, now's a good
Wait
time.
till
You're
that.
coming up on the summer and you get stuff. Try different stuff and see what works for you, and if you like it,
Exactly.
stay with it. If you don't, go back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do it a lot. I listen to basic almost every archery podcast I could find, and a lot of watching on YouTube. I mean, that's all the things that I watch is all archery related. It's all the time. But you always pick up little things, here and there that really can help you out. And especially beginning, I always recommend that is go to YouTube, listen to podcasts, take in everything you can because it will really help you.
Yeah, one thing I realized though when you're watching videos is they may not all be very good.
Well, that's the thing. You gotta take it with a
Yeah,
grain of salt and be careful of who you watch because
yeah,
not
yeah.
all of them are good, but most of the big name guys or if you know them personally, you could pretty much trust them.
Yeah.
To
Well, I know
on what.
I come across Olympic archer Jake Kaminsky
Oh yeah.
videos, and he's talking about string walker, and I'm like, what is string? I was just watching the uh, the video, a skinwalker,
Oh
the show
yeah,
Skinwalker,
yeah. The
Skinwalker Ranch
skinwalker.
out in Utah. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, stringwalker, skinwalker, is that related or what is it? So I
Right.
started watching his videos. It's like, oh, okay. And then I actually had somebody interviewed on here that does it, and it's
Yeah.
explain what's going on with it. And it's like, oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
in basic concept, what I understand is you're going to have your string all the way up against the arrow. That's going to be a distance. As you move your hand down the string, it changes your distance. So as
Yeah.
you're pointing more, moving the string up, it's going to point more down. So that'd be your close range. And then as you move up, if I'm getting this right, as you move your hand down on the string, it's going to drop the arrow down.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you set up against it for your long distance, and then just move your hand down and you use the tip of your arrow or something, reference it. And um,
Yeah.
I've never
They
tried.
actually,
I'm the old look at the target, draw back, and shoot.
yeah.
I
That's
don't
how
I
I
don't
was
see my
doing.
arrow.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I do know some of the guys, like I mentioned, my buddy Rich. They actually have on their tab, they have lines and numbers that are marked, so they could try to line it up to the serve and count the serving as they're going down each twist of it, and then that's what they use to try to get that same spot when like they find a spot that works to hit 20 yards or whatever they're aiming at. They know exactly where to put it between the numbers on the tab and then counting servings going down, and then they can put it in the same spot every time. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's something different. I always use
It is.
I just did instinctively, I that's how I grew up by not using the
Right.
tip or anything. And I look at the target, draw back and shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's all I do.
and others will use the tip of the arrow and they know, okay, here the tip of
Right.
the arrow, and then they know from this distance where to put it. And
Right.
I was like, my thought was, if I'm going to use the tip of the arrow, which is not exactly the same spot every time, because if you draw back and you draw a little quarter-inch longer draw length, that is going to change. More power, different spot. So all that changes, and then now I'm looking at the arrow.
Right.
I'm basically looking at my sights, not at the target.
Right.
Because the
Right.
compound, we don't look at the sights. We put the sights over the target. We look at
Yep.
where we want it to go. And if I'm using the tip of the arrow, I'm looking at the tip of the arrow. I'm not looking where I want it to go. And
Yeah.
for me, that just kind of a concept that I didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And I
know.
don't shoot, to be honest, I don't shoot my recurve enough to worry about it.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. No, I don't either. That's like I said, I pretty much stick straight just with compound. That's about it. Just concentrate on that. There's enough for me to do with just that to not need to dabble into everything else and,
Yeah.
flood myself with more stuff. So
Yeah. My recurve set up for bow fishing.
there you go. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's
like
good.
you don't have much time. You see the
Right.
fish, you draw back, shoot. See the fish,
Exactly.
draw back, shoot. And that's how I shoot that bow. The
Yep.
compound, see the fish, I draw back, find my pins, aim, fish is gone. I,
Yep.
I can't shoot a compound fast.
No, it's very tough too,
And
especially when you get in the habit of the way you're shooting it. Then it's
right.
tough to even do
Well,
that.
it's a different weapon. The
It
recurve
is
is a different weapon than your compound.
exactly
Different weapon than crossbow, which is, just like in a handgun, rifle, and shotgun. They're different weapons. You shoot them differently.
right.
You're going to hold them differently. You're going to aim differently. You're going to,
Yeah.
the whole process is different no matter what weapon you're using. Whether you're using a spear or what was it, an addle, the thing you have a little stick with a little thing you fling into. I've seen them. I
Well,
haven't had a chance to throw one yet. You know,
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
next year at the Missouri Valley Outdoor Expo, I'll sneak up there and see if I can throw one.
yeah, yeah.
Each year, Nebraska has their Missouri Valley Expo up at the way north end of Nebraska, up at the Ponca State Park. And
Okay.
the last couple of years, I've helped them out in their archery area.
Oh, nice.
So I go up there and volunteer, and then they always have all kinds of their stuff, and they're always set up not too far from me, but I'm just so busy with doing the archery stuff that
Yeah,
I just never get up there. So this next year, I think I'm going to have to take a trip and go up there and see if I can throw one.
yeah.
Look
No, that'd be
interesting to
really cool.
throw.
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be awesome. That'd be
Something
pretty cool.
different.
Yeah, something different. Yeah,
Yeah, it's all fun. Just different shooting sports and different sports is all kind of fun.
exactly.
So,
It is. It really is.
well, we've been talking for a little while now, so
Oh
time to
yeah,
let you
yeah,
go so you can get off, spend the rest of your Saturday and go do some shooting.
yeah, yeah. Get some practice in, as
Yeah.
always.
Oh, and I forgot at the beginning of the show to wish you happy birthday.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I,
Yep.
we got started. I was going to say something. It's like I just completely spaced it off because I sent you a message this morning.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh, it's
you
your
did.
birthday, and then I
Yeah.
completely spaced it. Off. I didn't even think about it. But yeah, I'm quite honored you're going to spend your birthday, on podcast with me and talking with our audience. It's really really cool. So, um,
Absolutely.
anybody that's listening or watching, it's like, hey, we're honored for him to spend his part of his birthday with us, and
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here with you. It really was. It was an honor to be on the show with you.
yeah, and it was great having you on, and maybe later we'll have you back on again and
Yeah,
catch up with what you're
anytime.
doing, and it's always fun talking to archers. Nice thing about on the podcast, I'm always open for archers, whether you're just starting out, haven't got your first bow,
Yeah,
come on, there's something, we can help you out, or go just want to hunt or just want to
right.
shoot target or just want to shoot. to the semi pros like you and professionals and Olympic
Yep.
archers. We've had them all on here from all over the world, and
Right.
that's what's nice about getting on here. And so hey, if you're an archer or thinking about archery, you want to be on the podcast, let me know. We'll get you on and we'll talk archery and help you out. Some of the stuff we talked about. If you're a new archer, definitely get a hold of us, because maybe what you're talking about, what your concerns are about starting. Hey, there's gonna be somebody else the same thing, and it's all
Exactly.
good stories. And every archer has something to offer.
They
We're
do.
always looking for, you know, information, stories. Um, yeah, everybody's got different stories and different reasons and different whys, and it's always
Yeah.
a lot of fun talking about all those. And
Oh, it is.
we just have a
It
lot of
really.
fun, and we can talk archery sometimes all day long.
Oh yeah. I can go all day.
We don't really want to take all day, but
Yeah.
we can get on here for a couple hours anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, almost 2 hours now. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's been great talking with you, and I enjoyed having you on. And thanks for being here and spending your birthday with us. And we'll see you on the next one.
Sounds great. Thank you again for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my name is Roy, and I've been your host today on Arch Talk 101. And we'll definitely catch you on the next one. Remember, look in the link for the description for the links to the place we talked about, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.